We're live.
You want to start, Jeff? Not really, but we'll get in the row.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, welcome to the Sour and Wild QA panel family get together. I'm Jeff Mello, Chief Yeast Wrangler, Bootleg Biology. We're a yeast company here in Nashville, Tennessee. We also do brewery QC services, and we started off focused on wild yeast cultures. We have a goal of collecting wild yeast from every zip code in the entire country, and are asking people to help collaborate with us so we can understand microbes out there that want to make us tasty beer.
I'm Devin. I'm one of the co-founders of Look the Funk, and we do online education for all things sour and wild and bread. But not sour bread. Not sour bread.
I'm Brandon Jones. I run the Embrace the Funk program at Yazoo Brewing Company. I also founded the website embracethefunk.com. I was a blogger for a few years before I started professionally brewing. Started brewing sour and wild funky beer in the early 2000s because we couldn't buy it here in Nashville, so you had to brew it yourself at that point. So kind of taken that platform from the blogging and education days and transformed that into what was a passion project all the way into a professional career now.
And you're one of the founders.
Yeah, and I am one of the founders of Look the Funk.
My name is Pixley. I'm the curator for the wiki. I probably do most of the work on the wiki, although Dave Jansen does quite a bit of work as well. I'm just a home brewer. Been home brewing for about 7 years. I make just sour beers for the last 5 years.
Thank you very much.
All right.
So yeah, we don't have a open discussion today on basically anything sour, funky, wild beer related. I know there's a lot of misconceptions on what processes are, what different microbes do. So we definitely want to make sure we get to everybody's question in the room. Just feel free to raise your hand, and one of the moderators will go through the crowd and find you.
We do have our first question, though.
Oh, we do? Oh, it's an online question. Okay. Quiet in the back, please.
This is from Josh Kaufman, and can all of you take a dip in Bob Sylvester's mash tun, hot tub, and send me a sample of water afterwards, asking for a friend?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to go back down to Tarpon. Bob is, speaking of, that does bring up a good point on some things that Bob does that makes what their process is unique. Open fermentation. And I know there's been a lot, but there has been debate on open fermentation. Is it something that actually does anything different than if you were to close off the fermenter and just pitch the yeast and let it go inside there? I've seen evidence, even in bottles and sensory, that there's definitely a difference. That CO2 blanket is not a substitute for a closed vessel. So there's a definite difference, even if you're still inside, like Bob's tanks or old wine tanks, flat bottom wine tanks that have a rope pulley system on the top, and you can just remove the lid and move it off to the side. So even though it is kind of flat bottom, but sort of cylindrical up top, and not a square, large open fermenter, I think that he gets distinctly different esters and character out of those yeasts, just because there is not that pressure inside of there, and it is open. Now he does talk about free range microbes, Tarpon Springs, Brettanomyces, and the other microbes that I think he's really trying to get in his new place, because we had a conversation earlier this year, and Bob had moved from his old facility, and a lot of the St. Somewhere beers had quite a bit of Brettanomyces and lactic acid in them. This new facility where he is at, that native flora has not built up inside the wood beams inside of his brew house. So it was kind of neat to see that, and that to me, that definitely shows you there is a difference in open fermentation versus a closed vessel. You move it, and those native microbes aren't there, and that influence was not happening, I think, for the first few months. I'm going to continue to speak for Bob. I can say anything at this point.
We do have a serious question. This is again from Josh Kaufman. He goes, and this was, he said, more suited for Jeff and Isaac, but he goes, I lost my glasses. Is more consistent over time to break down a wild, harvested, mixed culture into its constituent parts and propagate each, or keep the whole culture together and attempt to propagate it each time? When dealing with a wild, harvested, in this case, fruit skin placed with sterile wort culture likely containing a diverse array of microbes, how valuable is attempting to break that culture down to its constituent parts? I'm wondering if there is a gaining consistency generation to generation if each microbe is grown separately versus propagating the entire mixed culture each time. One concern I have is the inability to isolate all constituent microbes, thus losing complexity. Conversely, if you try to propagate the entire mixed culture each time, both the ratios of microbes and the continued existence of certain microbes in the blend might be thrown off anyway. I think it's a trick question.
I'm not sure where to begin. I think the main crux of his question is how much does the human hand playing with microbes, whether they're pure cultures or a diverse mixed culture, have in changing that? The final number of microbes, the final population, the ratios they have. And the answer is that anytime you touch it, you're going to change it, even when you're working with pure cultures. I think there's so many ways to answer that question. I would say we get a lot of mixed culture samples from people that, for the most part, they assume to have hundreds, thousands of yeast and bacteria, and we'll pull out one yeast, one bacteria, because the dominant culture is so dominant that there might be a few other cultures in there, there might be a few cells, but you would have to really dig deep into pulling them out. So that might be an argument for never isolating a culture. If you want to maintain a certain mix that created this wonderful flavor, maybe don't pull them out, because it might be really hard just on a homebrew level to pull out a single cell of that one yeast that might be contributing to something that's really unique. That being said, you can't really study a culture unless you isolate it out and make it pure. So at Bootleg, we do isolate cultures, wild yeast cultures that get sent to us, because we can study them alone. We can bank them better. We can guarantee certain characteristics over time. But that being said, I think you can do whatever works best for your process and what your end goal is. If you want to see what a culture does over time, take a sample over time. Take it 2 weeks into fermentation, you're going to see a high amount of sap cultures. Take it a month to 6 weeks into fermentation, and you might see a higher proportion of wild yeast cultures. Look at it 2-3 months, you might see a dominant bacteria or a different wild yeast that was there originally. Those cultures are constantly changing, and the more you look at a traditional lambic fermentation process, every step in the process there's a different dominant microbe. So if you want to maintain a house character, I would say keep it as a mixed culture, but it's always going to change. You can't dial in a mixed culture exactly the same way every time. But with a pure culture, you can do that for the most part. So really, I think the answer is what's your end goal, and use the methods that are available to you to do those.
Yeah, and to tag on what Jeff said there about, your culture will change. That's where you need to become a better blender at that point. And you need to figure out what it is about that culture that has changed. And, we're assuming your process is still the same, so that your kind of low-hanging fruit on your barrel is the culture has changed. It has gotten more stack. It has gotten more lactic acid to it. So that's why I always tell people to, if it's not coming out, then, make something opposite of how your beer came out. And, work on your blending skills on that. And that's where you get consistency. That's something that I've kind of had to do a lot more of this year, in the past 2 years, as the sour program's grown, and our barrels, especially beers like DeRouge's, where we brew 80 barrels, 80 to 120 barrels of that a year now, and to get that blend, to get DeRouge's to taste like DeRouge's, as DeRouge's tastes, it's definitely going through and blending, and those barrels, they definitely do not pitch everything at the same time, and they all came from the same winery, and they're all sitting within 2 feet of each other, and then they're distinctly different. So that's, it's a great option. It's not really a big issue. I love to blend. That's one of my favorite things to do about my job is blending. It's not really good to drink beer at 9 o'clock in the morning either. It's just, it's more the art of it. So.
Do we have questions from anybody out here?
Thanks.
Okay, let's get the microphone so everybody can hear the question. Do we have a spare microphone?
No. Unless you want us to pass this.
There's 2 microphones.
I mean, we can move through the crowd if we need to.
Yeah, that might be so.
I was just wondering if you guys had any advice on like starting your sour beer programs, or like anything you did that you would do differently on a second go around.
If we would do anything differently?
Yeah, when you started, if there was just like a giant mistake you made, or there's something you think you do better.
In homebrewing, I would definitely say I wish I would have dumped more beer in the beginning. I know that there was, thinking back on it now, there were definitely batches that I had in carboys that I took to people's houses and let them taste. That thinking back now, I was like, wow, those were probably not very good. Those are definitely probably acetic as hell, and they just weren't very balanced. So no, I wish I would have done something like that. But again, I just didn't have anybody to tell me, because at the time, this is one of the big reasons why I started the blog, was the only other real source on the website or on the internet. You could go to the Burgundy of Battle Bell or Mike Tomsonar's site, and that was pretty much it. That was all your choices, and most of the books at that time had so much misinformation in them, so you really couldn't trust what was in the text. So you had to go for these real life, real life examples and learn, work your way through it. I was fortunate enough to be able to be in contact with some of the first pioneers of American sour brewing. So, thankfully, I was able to get advice from people that I only hope to attain to reach those levels one day. But things to do it differently, sure. I wish I would have had somebody to tell me to dump stuff, but nobody was brewing these beers around here, so there was really nobody. There was no real kind of litmus test almost for what to dump and what not to dump. To me, it was like, oh man, I made beer with acidity in it and had this, and and it didn't kill me. So I would encourage to dump more. Yeah, I mean, you spent your Saturday making the beer, and then you spent 10 months aging it, and then you went to taste it right before bottling, and it just wasn't that good. Don't get down on that. That's not something you should be ashamed of. We still dump beer, yeah, I do. I mean, I still, I dump barrels upon barrels sometimes. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's really no big deal. It's not a sign of failure. It's not a sign that you're a bad brewer. It makes you a better brewer if you dump. And it's the complete opposite. I know, there's definitely a sense of pride in it, and you feel like you wasted your time, but I mean, don't waste everybody else's time.
Got a question from Dave Jansen.
Well, wait.
Oh, go ahead, Devin.
One thing I wish I would have started brewing sour beer more often. When I first started, I kind of did 1 or 2 a year, and I really didn't progress in how good I got until I started doing 1 or 2 a month. And like anything, you can't learn without practicing. So you can read all you want to about this type of stuff, but if you're not practice, you'll never get better at making anything. So that's kind of why I started into quicker sours too, so you can get more feedback a little bit faster. And then also having those long-aged beers. So I might do brew one beer that's going to be aged for a long time per month, and then the 3 other weeks I'm brewing faster turnaround sours. So get a lot of practice in.
Okay, we got a question from Dave Jansen. How have y'all's goals, the targets for brewing sour beer changed over the last few years, and how they changed their processes to better achieve those goals? And you may have touched on those a little while ago, but
right. Okay, I think one of my big goals lately is kind of how do we make super drinkable sour beer fast, like easier to get to a consumer at like a fair price. So we're not doing like all the time doing like $30 bottles of sour beer, but we can do something along the line of like Berliner Weiss and get more people drinking sour beer. Like one of my goals is to go to like a tailgating at a football game and see people drinking like, Berliner Weiss or something along that style instead of like a session IPA. I just want everybody to kind of know about sours, get into them, and just make them more accessible.
You would like people to embrace the fun.
I would like people to embrace it.
This is reading the question. My goals and targets, I'll speak on the pro level and commercial level. I've tried to soften our beers a lot more. Really back off lactobacillus sourness on it. To me, even though no matter how many times we've done stuff, it just lactose sour tastes like lactose sour to me. I'm not saying that that's what everybody tastes, it's just to me. So I think we've really tried to work on softening our sours, and one way we've done that is through TA levels and not really paying that much of attention to pH and just seeing how the beers actually taste. Quickly go over pH versus TA. pH just will tell you the level of acidity in there. It doesn't care how it actually is perceived on the palate. So TA levels actually gives you a measure of how acidic or sour, for that matter, how it actually tastes on the human palate. So you're becoming, again, go back to blending, but you can become a better brewer and a better blender by changing that little process like that. You can buy equipment that's quite expensive, or you can do their test. I think I spoke on it last year, but their quick test you can do that. It'll get you in the ballpark. I mean, it's not going to be precise as it's a digital meter that you have gone through and made sure all the settings are correct. It'll get you in the ballpark of it, the quick test. But you can definitely figure out if your beer is sitting at like on the scale like a 7 or a 12 on it, and you can easily find if you're going through and pulling from barrels. It's pretty easy to see on the color scale what levels the acidity is going to be on the palate, and that makes my blends quicker and easier and to go through. That's all I was saying on that. But Dan,
along the lines of Brandon, I'm also trying to curb the acidity on my beers. My culture is really aggressive, and it can get really, really sour, as Devin can attest to. And so I'm doing that with hops. Doing a lot of aged hops or a combination of aged hops and fresh hops. Also playing with late hops in the wort, or when you're making the wort. Just really light hopping. I'm a home brewer, so on the home brewer scale it's an ounce. A few Kent Goldings at 10 minutes for a 5-gallon batch. You guys will have to scale that up. Sorry. And also, water chemistry is really interesting to me right now, and I think it's something that is underappreciated in sour beers. Andrew Zinn from Wicked Weed is really generous with the information that he can.
Just talk a little loud.
Andrew Zinn has been very helpful, giving some hints on what they do at Wicked Weed. They use a lot of sulfates, so a lot of gypsum. I don't know the exact amounts, but that's just tells you that the water chemistry play a large role. I think there's also some potential with like limestone or chalk, bicarbonate. So yeah, those are the things I've been working on.
He doesn't brew.
Anybody, okay, we got a question.
Easy. There's a lot of people to go through.
So I've seen a lot of breweries that are getting interested in sours and mixed fermentation, but don't really have like a huge barrel program that they started up. I can't even count the number of breweries I've seen that just have a few barrels of something souring over in the corner in their brewery. And I was just wondering if you guys could speak to maybe some of the different thinking about, you know, starting a sour program in your brewery, but also just there seems to be a big range of people that are so petrified, have any of those bugs in their brewery. They want to keep it segregated. They want separate facilities. And then you've got brewers that are like, I can kill Brett. I can kill lactobacillus. I'll ferment that in this tank. I'm not scared of it at all. I'll just hit it with more paracetic acid, and that's that. So I just was wondering if you could kind of speak to maybe some of the myths or misconceptions, or how important segregation is with sour programs versus your clean side.
Yeah, I think I can definitely speak on that. So I definitely believe that they need to be separate facilities. I think that even with the best QC, I mean, look at what happened to a brewery like Goose Island, and what happened with Bourbon County. I mean, arguably has some of the greatest scientific resources out there in QC and brewing, and they still missed it. So separate facilities, we run our sour program at a facility that's about 5 miles away from the main brewery, and that's not just because we don't think Brett can travel 5 miles. It's just that's where the facility is. But point being is like it's not just a garage door separating us. Now for years we did. I think Linus and myself and Ken Price that runs the quality control lab at Yazoo. We did feel like we were always running. I was likening it to you can run up to the edge of a cliff so many times, and man, you might stop right on the edge 6,000 times, but all it takes is 6,001 where you trip and you go right over. And for a brewery our size, if something I was doing got in the line there, say 200 barrel batch of pale ale, well, that might not get picked up until that is already packaged and sent out, and we actually already have another batch that potentially affects 400 barrels worth of pale ale. That's more than some breweries might even make in 6 months. So I mean that's a substantial amount of beer that would have to be recalled, to be a black eye, be a financial loss. So I would always say if you have the means and ability, don't count on doubling up paracetic. I mean, the levels of paracetic everything that I know from Mike Waffler where we get our chemicals, doubling is just wasting at that point. There's a standard as to what will kill or disrupt the cell, the cell walls and membranes, and what you should use. I mean, doubling up is, I don't know. It's just, to me, that's not what you should do. You should concentrate elsewhere. We always ran separate hoses. We taped everything in red. So anything red, just in case it got picked up, I always stored the Embrace the Funk hoses upstairs at the brewery. But everything was taped in red, and that way, just in case somebody just grabs a hose, they, before they go hook it up, they would see bright red around there. But I think you're really messing with your flagships in this market, in this day and age, with how many SKUs are on the shelf. I mean, do you want to be that guy to lose that raw beer that you had for 6 months on there, and that's going to be blank now because you've had to recall 2 subsequent batches, and maybe that beer got out to the consumer and they don't like it now, and you might not get that person back. So financially, I think it's a bad call.
Wayne.
I think everything that Brent said makes perfect sense, and I'm not a brewer. I don't run a brewery. I can speak from the micro perspective in that there's an assumption that bread is somehow the most powerful yeast in the world, and only a superhuman could destroy it. It can die. Brett has multiple situations where it can kill itself. It's self-destructive. That being said, it has an ability to over-attenuate wort, and only a few cells can create a significant flavor contribution in a beer. So I think you've got to put it in perspective in that a lot of breweries get contaminants just from everyday use of their facility, from missing a QC point in the process, and CIP maybe isn't perfect. You have microbes around you all the time, and you may not know that they're in your beer. So I think it is wise to have a separate facility. That may not be an option for everyone. Have a separate room, have separate hoses, have separate gaskets, have separate tanks. But you're probably contaminating your beer right now with other brewing yeast strains. You just don't know it. So unless your sanitation is absolutely impeccable, unless your QC program is absolutely impeccable, it's more dangerous to run those in the same place. But if you are just going to jump into it, if you're going to go to that edge of that cliff, be as smart about it as possible.
And just a real touch on that, we did a video yesterday with Jeff starting a QC program on a budget video that's been posted on the Southern Brewers Conference page. If you guys watch this later or you're out in the audience, it's already been posted on the Southern Brewers Conference page. It'll also be cross-posted on Notes of Funk. So it was very interesting. So, anybody else have a question? Okay, we have a question from Josh Kaufman. He goes with
one more. You had something else though about the barrels, right? It wasn't just.
Oh no, I was just saying that I've seen so many breweries that just kind of there's like 3 or 4 barrels over the corner of something that they decided to sour, and it's just like they're just kind of it just seems like they're not really fully committed to a sour program, but they're also like not that concerned about centering their.
Well, I do want to speak on something about that real quick then, because that does bring up a point that, and again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about things that I would have changed when I was first homebrewing. Breweries that get a barrel from a store and they have no experience, and I have no problem with people. I mean, all of us at one point had no experience doing this. But just taking if you make, I don't know, like an Irish Red and throwing it in the barrel and going up to the homebrew shop and dumping in a couple of packs and oversampling it and sending that out, that's an issue that I've seen to breweries that aren't fully committed. And I'm not saying you have to go all the way in, but I just, I feel like if I don't say this, then I'm kind of wasting my platform as somebody that's a full-time sour and wild beer brewer, that this is my livelihood. Those types of things make us all look bad. They're not quality. They're not representative of the styles, and they're simply knockoffs most of the time. So I don't have an issue with anybody making small batch stuff at all. I mean, if you can only do 2 to 3 barrels, and the stuff and what you're putting out is inspired and it's quality, by all means, do 2-3 barrels a year. I'm probably one of the first people in line to drink it. But the issue that I see more often is that brewers that are taking over and doing these sour projects are doing everything opposite to anything they've been taught, and they're always kind of pulling back a little bit on it, and they're not creating the best product. You don't have to go all in on the program, but please go all in on the actual project that you're making.
And this next question from Josh Kaufman kind of leads into that. He goes, with more and more breweries producing not only kettle sours, but barrel-aged sours, do you see the popularity of these styles waning in the coming years due to saturation?
No, I don't think so. Just think of how many IPAs you see in the market. It's like insane now. Everyone's brewing a New England IPA, so I don't think we're going to hit a saturation point anytime soon.
I mean, you're telling us we need to have Berliners and a tailgate party like that.
Right.
That's not saturation. That's achieving a goal.
Right.
I don't. we're still scratching the surface as to what we can actually do with these styles and how we can create different flavors for people. So no, I certainly don't. I'd say that if anything, it's not going to wane or get whitewashed or anything. They're only going to become better because most consumers now have such a quality selection they can choose from. The shitty ones will get weeded out, and they will learn when they sit on the shelf for a year and a half, and the retailer doesn't pick them back up, that they're not going to brew those styles again. So I think actually your quality is going to go up, and then with the expansion of the quality programs, the beers will just get better.
And also too, Milk the Funk. Milk the Funk wasn't here as a resource. How many years ago? 3 years ago? Yeah. If you're starting up a program, you have a wealth of knowledge, experts, the wiki that Dan expertly curates. We didn't have that a few years ago. When I started Bootleg, in some retrospect, I went in there flying blind, and I know so much more now from my own experience, but I know so much more now because of Milk the Funk and these gentlemen here. So there's no excuse to go into a program uninformed. Educate yourself first before jumping in feet first.
Anybody in the audience have a question? Okay. And thanks for liking it on Facebook, Danny.
I'm going to rapid fire for three of you gentlemen. Jeff, I love that your goal is to have yeast cultures from every zip code. I'd love to know how many zip codes you're up to. Devin, the beer that you brewed last night that used hay was fantastic. I wish you could discuss that.
Okay.
And Brandon, one of the most enlightening beer experiences of my drinking career was your breaking bread event that you did. I'd love for you to discuss that so people can learn about it.
We're nearing close to 250 to 300 local yeast cultures now. So we have, I think, 40 to 60,000 zip codes in the U.S. We've been going at it strong since 2013, so it's a lifetime goal to achieve that. It's kind of a mission of Bootleg to expand the knowledge of wild yeast and getting science in the hands of home brewers and craft brewers. It's not a money-generating enterprise, and I don't know many businesses who would take on an audacious project that would never really bring any kind of financial stability to the company. But for me, it's the reason why we do Bootleg. It's the reason why I took on the stresses of starting up a business. It's because I wanted to do something that I thought would hopefully change the world, or at least we could contribute something to the knowledge and the availability of unique microbes to people who want to make interesting beers.
The beer from last night I made, from my presentation yesterday, I was talking about being hyper-experimental. So anytime like a new yeast strain or something comes out, I just buy it. A lot of these homebrew pitch sizes, if you're going to do like test batches, or you're paying $10 plus shipping to get some new yeast strain in, that can change the entire way your beer tastes. So that one was Hothead, which is a Kivite, is that right now? Yeah. It's like a Nordic brewing yeast. So I kind of dug into that style of brewing, and actually went to the library at the university I worked for, and they have a book on Nordic brewing from like the 60s. So I went all through that, and then there's another guy named Lars that started a blog where he's kind of going through Norwegian, Scandinavian like brewing traditions. So one of the things I saw that was pretty interesting, I brew on my buddy's 600-acre farm, and they have, in the Nordic traditions, they use hay and juniper as a mash filter. So I just took my cooler and went out in the backyard and got red cedar clippings and then hay from down where the cows are, and just use that as my mash filter, just in like a regular homebrew like mash ton, and that contributed a lot. I did also put red cedar into the strike water, just like a few branches in there, but it contributed a lot to the beer that I made. And then fermented it with the Kivike strain, which is kind of a crazy fermenter. It's from Hothead, from Omega, and it flocks like crazy, and like the yeast like literally stuck to the bottom of the carboy and I had to like blast it out with like water to get it out. But so that dropped almost completely clear, and then I pitched all my stuff on top of it. So it'd be Jeff's PDO blend, and then Lacto P from Good Belly, and then all my bread stuff. Usually keep all collected and repitch every time. That's how they don't know.
I can attest that's a great beer. I really like that. So, Maddie, you asked about the Breaking Bread series or presentation that we did. So that was kind of a continuation of education. I think we did that maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. So at the time, Breaking Bad was on, and so I made the series, the logo Breaking Bread. It was super clever. I thought it was cool. And so what we did at the time, this gentleman up in New York, Dimitri, had isolated out 3 different Brettanomyces from a bottle of Cantillon Iris, and actually brought water today. He brought, so he showed me down the isolates, and so we brewed a beer and only fermented with each one of those isolates in there. And so the whole point was to break out the breadth and to show the different and distinct qualities, because one of the things one of the descriptors that I always hate is horse blanket. When people describe Brettanomyces, say it's a Brettanomyces beer, and oh yeah, I heard that one time, horse blanket. And it just drives me insane, because that just sounds so unappetizing and unappealing to me. So we wanted to show the different characteristics of each one of these Brettanomyces isolates. And so the 3 beers, we did a presentation on what is Brettanomyces. Does it actually, does it sour? Does it or does it make sour beer? Does it always create stuff that tastes like like a farm? And we were able to break that out and show that no, you can get a lot of pineapple. You can definitely get licorice out of some of these strains. You can get a great Star Innocence, black cherry type character out of it. So showing people, and I think we had maybe 50 or 60 people, a little bit less that's in this room right now. We had about 50 or 60 people there, and being able just to enlighten them on what these microbes do and what they don't do. And so that in turn, helps them go out into the market and be better informed consumers, brewers, and I just thought it was a really fun event, and to be able just to talk about the differences. And again, I like to talk about what things don't do. Always need to talk about what they do. Sometimes people need to be told what they actually do not do, and just dispel those myths. And again, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that was always a big point of Embrace the Funk, was to help just to help people learn. And I always felt like if we could get people to learn about these wonderful styles, the most complex styles on the planet, then you can bring them in, you can show them great examples of it, and then they're going to be the next person to, oh man, I tried this really cool beer, and it had this yeast in it called Brettanomyces, and they tell their friend, and they get into a discussion, and they actually find a commercial example somewhere, and then you've got your next new customer, and they help create a whole new customer base, and it's all based upon accurate information, and you related it to them in a way that you're not telling them to taste. I mean, if somebody walked up to you and said, "Hey, what you taste? It tastes like horse blanket." What the hell are you talking about? No, it's like this is bad. Does this milk smell sour? That's terrible. So when you tell people that these things taste like pears and Granny Smith apples and wonderful foods, think we can do better on these descriptors. We can tell people about these beers that we work on for anywhere from 6 months to a year. We've got that long to come up with better descriptors than horse blanket and sour.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Kentucky, and I literally have horses in my backyard, and I've never smelled a horse in the muddle before.
I got a question, and I'm going to let Brandon get on his high horse again, but this is something that's come up on Untapped and other things, and it's the term bread not sour.
Yeah, I mean, that was literally born of my frustration of creating Britannomyces beers that were not sour. And that was almost kind of like a little reverse troll against, but then the beer caught on. And it's just an American IPA with a lot of, I think we use like Citra, Galaxy, Mosaic in it, maybe some Centennial. But yeah, just all it's an American IPA with Britannomyces, and it's not sour. It's very tropical. It's very dry. I mean, it's the hyperattenuate, like Jeff was talking about. The Britannomyces can definitely hyperattenuate and really dry the beers out. But yeah, it has no sourness to it. So I thought, what better way to get people to realize that than just literally call the beer Brett not sour and make them say it. Like if you make them say it, that if they're saying it, then maybe it'll stick. It'll take 99% of the time that stuck. And I was fine with people actually not liking the beer, but people did. But the people that didn't, I'm fine with that. I mean, I've never, somebody, it's not your style. It's not your style. I mean, there's plenty of styles I don't like. But if you're disliking it for the right reasons, that's an informed person that truly has a valid opinion.
And I think it all came from a tap posting where a consumer suggested that you had to dump all the beer because their Brett beer wasn't sour, and the name of the beer was Brett Not Sour. It was pretty hilarious, actually.
It was.
And that was by the time Yeppy was going off on somebody else on one of his Untapped things. So it was just the timing was just
exquisite there. I didn't Yeppy sent me a message to him.
Okay. We have a unnamed source asked if you ever going to make a hot chicken sour beer.
Well, I don't know. Didn't Yeppy make one?
I don't know.
Beer.
Fried chicken
beer.
Fried chicken beer, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm sure he's watching right now. So next time he's in Nashville, maybe we can make a hot chicken version of that recipe. We'll do it with all Brett. I'll add to the barnyard character.
Okay, Angling.
All right, so not that long ago, Mantra picked up a cool ship, and then Yazoo got a cool ship right after that. So my question is, do you see cool ships becoming a new trend amongst breweries that with wild sour programs?
That's for me.
Yes.
Hi, Dan. I think anybody can speak on the trends of cool ships. I'd say as more breweries, more commercial breweries are trying to find ways to differentiate themselves from kettle sours and from fast turnaround sours. Cool shipping and local and native microflora is the way to go. That's kind of what I hit on yesterday, was how I feel like we've made our program distinctly different on our character just by using local flora in the mix. Not to say we still have other stuff that we get from labs, but yeah, we've definitely mixed in native flora. We found we brewed the first 100% spontaneous commercial beer in Tennessee 6 years ago. So there's nothing really new to us as far as like doing it. It's just we're doing it on a larger scale now with our cool ship. Ours is kind of designed. Ours is custom built. We had it designed to where we could not only do overnight cooling and ambient inoculation. We can also do open fermentations in it, and we've only done one so far open fermentation. For folks that don't know what open ferm is kind of hit on it earlier on what Bob does, but ours is a large square pan, and we built the walls up on it, so we can go ferment for 2 to 3 days, and the krausen will not go foaming out. So that's kind of we could actually do a true fermentation instead of just using it as a cooling device. It also can be a fermenter.
Do you think the geometry of that fermentation vessel also plays a factor in the flavors you're getting?
Absolutely, yeah. Devin asked the geometry of the cool ship and the fermenter. Yeah, I mean, if you're fermenting in a shallow square rectangle container, as opposed to having a conical, where if you ever looked at yeast when it's going it drops and it starts flocculating down, you can actually get a vortex going inside of the conical. That's kind of the main reason to have a conical, is to keep knocking the yeast up. You get quicker, healthier, better attenuations, and then when it does drop, it forms a nice cone at the bottom to be able to pack down. But you don't really get that in an open fermenter that is a large, square, shallow pan. So yeah, you get distinctly different esters and characters out of the yeast that you would not get inside of a closed fermenter. So it's definitely a tool that we've been able to I think the design of it, we're able to utilize ours to year round. It's not a tool that we can only use during a certain season and it just sits in the way the rest of the year, or just collects dust. I mean, we purposely did it that way, and because it just doesn't make sense to me to have this beautiful piece of equipment and this fun piece of equipment if you can only use it 4 months out of the year when that's not our main focus. We're not 100% spontaneous fermenting brewery, so I still need to make other beers throughout the year that are unique, and you get these cool ideas, or you have these cool locations you can go. Maybe there's like a neat ingredient that you can finally source, and you think, oh, that would go really well with this yeast, and oven firm is the way to go, I think, on some of those recipes. So yeah, just to make things different, more fun, but local, native flora. And Jeff can speak on this. There's just so many untapped variants of it out there that are undiscovered, nobody's using, and they're right there. The beauty of it is that after you got the equipment, the flora is free.
And I like the fact that both of y'all, Mantra and yourself, y'all are portable. You can actually take your cool ships out into a field or an orchard or whatever and try to capture that flora too. So.
I actually have a question I want to throw to Dan. I feel like the wiki is such a fantastic resource, and I was hammering on this earlier about how we as a community have so much more readily available knowledge. That there are sour brewers right now who are very well acclaimed that go to the wiki regularly to answer questions. And so I guess more of a open question to you, Dan, is what would you say that maybe in the past year that you've learned from pulling together all these studies and everyone's experience that you think the community has now actually have more available knowledge to them now, just because of the work that's been put into the wiki and what people have contributed?
Well, thank you, Jeff. That was a big question. I tend to focus a little bit more on the science stuff than the process stuff, especially on the commercial side. I think one of the big things on the microbiology level is looking at how different microbes interact with each other during fermentation and how they affect each other. We all know like the basics. That lactic acid inhibits, Saccharomyces, that Brettanomyces is more tolerant of lactic acid. But there's also really weird things that are going on. Like, for example, lactic acid can also inhibit, I can't remember so we all know that Saccharomyces ferments simple sugars first, and then it ferments the more complex sugars next. The presence of lactic acid turns that off so that they're fermenting all the sugars at the same time. And it's just a really weird thing, I think we're going to see a lot more of that going forward in science. I think that's, unfortunately, there's not a lot of money in science for this, so it's very slow. But talking to people like Richard Price, that's really some of the more interesting things that we have yet to learn.
Anybody else have any questions out in the audience? We're almost to the end of time here, but I want to get y'all's feelings on the nomenclature of sour beer. You know, we have the lambic and the method goose, and what's that say? Is that
Oh yeah, I know that.
Yeah, and of course now the latest thing I read the other day is that down in the Belgium and French areas want to try to hook up on, take the word saison from everybody. So just want to get y'all's feeling about that, because that's a topic that's brought up on both the fronts, so might as well hit it.
I'm not one for going hard on like this has to be exactly this to call it this, but I personally have moved away from naming conventions like that. I've been starting to call my stuff just like a golden sour. I think those labels kind of put you in a box or kind of inhibit what you're doing. I really don't like to brew to a certain style. Like even like if I'm brewing a saison type, I still don't think I'm hitting what saison really is. So for me personally, I'm trying to brew my own beer. I'm not trying to brew, some person in Belgium's beer. I'm trying to figure out how, as American brewers, we can take things that are around us and newer techniques and make our own completely new thing. Like I just don't want to put myself in a box as far as brewing style. So.
I'm trying to think how to answer this.
I definitely have thoughts if you want to.
Yeah.
So I think that Americans have this way of thinking about beer that's very influenced from Germany, from German brewing. It's all about styles, right? And sour beer really throws a wrench into that because it's so unexplored, like Devin was saying, and things are constantly changing. So, on one level, you have to respect what's been done before you. Calling your beer a lambic is, personally, I have a problem with that. I don't think anybody should call their beer a lambic. I've seen heard arguments that, even the lambic brewers don't really adhere to their own traditions. They're throwing bananas and lambics and, not really doing 100% spontaneous fermentation and things like that. But, what they do is what they do. Leave that argument for them to decide amongst themselves. You have another one with farmhouse ales. American brewers will call anything with wheat in it in a saison yeast, they'll either call it a saison or farmhouse ale. Well, if you talk to somebody like Lars Garshaw, who Devin mentioned earlier, his definition of a farmhouse ale is completely different, because there's people living in Norway who are brewing using the same tradition that they've done for hundreds and hundreds of years, and to them that's a farmhouse ale. This subject is really vast. The whole thing about even calling something a sour beer, that can also be a whole other discussion. This is like a really big problem. It covers marketing, I think, on the commercial brewers level. It covers competitions. It covers how people think about beer in general. So it's an impossible question to answer.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, that's kind of my response. I don't think there's any really good answer right now. There just needs to be more open dialogue without people catching feels over everything. I would rather see cooler heads prevail in some of these discussions. They don't have to be arguments, just let them be discussions. That's what I would like to see in this. I think the question might be a little bit loaded just because I think it's referring mostly to method goose, which is definitely the hot button. It's It's something that I believe that the terminology and what Jeffrey was trying to do with Method Goose, I think his heart and mind is absolutely in the right place for it, because Jeff gets it. He's traveled to Belgium. I know that I know he put a lot of thought into MG. So, I don't think it was ever, to me, I always viewed it as something, as Method Goose was something that the lambic producers probably should pay more attention to, and not immediately dismiss, because I do believe it is something that you're trying to say the same thing. You're trying to make the designation that you're not making lambic here, you're only doing it inspired. It's just an inspiration from it, and that's, just to get the point across for it. I think they're saying you're trying to protect the same thing. That's the way I viewed it. It was two different schools of thought trying to protect and make distinction against for the same thing. So basically, lab pitched. You're not going out and buying lambic blend from one of the large producers, and you're not kettle souring and calling it a lambic. That was my view on it. That's what I saw on that effort.
Okay, well, that's good answers, guys. And unless anybody else has questions, we'll wrap it up. It's about lunchtime, and when we first walked in here, we thought this was going to last about 20 minutes, and we almost went a full hour. So thanks for attending. Thanks for the guys for putting this together. I think it was very interesting.
Thank you.